I think it's important to note that after all these shows we've done and all the times we've recorded, that we've come down to finally coming up with the best technical approach to them letting us know when 15 minutes has passed.
I do too.
We've done everything but have Grouch's duck drop down, and we still miss it, but we will get it right today.
Thank you, Jackie, for that.
Okay.
Welcome.
Before you introduce the show, I would just like to say that I have an important question that's of interest, maybe perhaps to our guest, David Criblez. And I also have something I think is interesting, which is for us to discuss and him to discuss, and us being from different generations, it could verge on interesting. I doubt if it'll be funny, but that's never bothered you. So go ahead.
All right, no rush here. Welcome.
Go ahead and introduce.
Welcome to Standup Memories. I am Peter Bales. You've already heard a lot of Jackie Martling, and what a guest we have today, David Criblez from Newsday, and an expert really in the Long Island music and comedy scene, and we want to pick his brain today.
Journalist par extraordinaire.
That's what he is.
That sounds great. Thanks.
Not bad. Now, I got a question for you, and this has nothing to do with comedy. Well, it's got just life in general. You're a kid. You're in first grade, you're in sixth grade, whatever grade. I know I came from a little school, so the school is here, and across the grass is the parking lot. And I distinctly remember how weird it felt to see a teacher come walking out and smoke a cigarette. And I couldn't explain it because my parents smoked, everybody smoked in the 50s. But it just didn't compute. It was like seeing Mickey Mouse smoking a cigarette or something.
Right.
But the reason I'm bringing this up is because I got the same feeling the first time I saw Paul McCartney smoking a cigarette.
Oh. Wow.
Was that weird at all, or did that not just
no,
fly
because
right past you?
A student doesn't really think that a teacher is human.
Yeah.
Now, full disclosure, as we get to our guest, we have a guest.
Included him.
I was actually David Criblez's history teacher when he was in high school. So that's a full disclosure, and I think that
You guys didn't tell me that.
Yes, it's true.
The dirty secret.
And I
Smoking
now
just
I
impressed him?
no, but it is true that students really check out everything about a teacher. Will walk in, you'll hear, "Oh, new shirt," "Oh, you just got a haircut," things like that. They really are zeroing in quite incredibly.
How weird was it to walk into the teacher's lounge?
Oh, well, you're not supposed to walk into the
It was like no man's land.
I
It
know,
was like,
everybody has to
whoa,
put their clothes on and everything. It's embarrassing.
I couldn't believe Paul McCartney was
I know. David Criblez.
But so did that strike you the least bit
Well,
weird?
I'll tell you the interesting thing about that. My wife is a teacher. So and she works in Glen Cove, and as you know, I live in Bayville, which is the town over. So whenever we're in Glen Cove and she runs into a student, same expression. They all are in shock that you exist in reality.
What are you doing at a store?
It's like that. Like, what are you doing out of the building? Don't you live in the building?
I always wondered if it struck other people. But
it happens all the time.
Of course it would. But why it struck me about, like, I saw McCartney smoking, and Lennon, I'm like, and Ringo smokes more than any of them. I'm like, no, you know. So here's my question for today. And David, full disclosure, said he's 52 years old. Peter is 83. I'm 74. So we come from various generations. Just before I came in today, I got a text from a good friend from way back. And he said, "Would you do my podcast? Would you zoom in on my podcast?" And I said, "Sure," because he's a guy that played piano with me on all the Rascals comedy hours and stuff like that. And his name is Paul Veneer, and he's a delightful guy. He's been a comedian for decades and decades and decades.
Comedy Tornado.
The Comedy Tornado. So I said, "Listen, I really like to, but I'm having knee surgery on Monday, but once I recover from that, of course, I would love to do your thing." And he wrote back, "Getting old sucks." He said, "I had a stroke a while back. I lost control of my right arm, and I just about lost my speech, but my speech is slowly coming back." And I wrote back to him, what's the name? The Half of Paul Veneer Show?
Oh, man.
So, which leads me to my question.
Yeah.
That's a whole new avenue of politically incorrect.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm a black guy, I make a black joke. And I say, it's okay, I'm a black guy, I made the black joke. Or African American, whatever I'm allowed to say. You know, I don't know if little people make jokes. I could say midget because I'm a midget, you know. But if I'm old myself,
Right.
and the reason he said that in the first place is because I had disclosed that, my knee is not like a stroke, but like, you know, I had a seizure, full disclosure, and my question is, when we're old, are old people allowed to joke with old people
Yes.
about that? You know what I'm saying? That like if I'm a black guy, I make a black joke.
Yeah.
If I'm old, I'm just like, not like an 18-year-old kid saying, you had a stroke, what are you, half for you?
Well, it's interesting because in our country, because we have such sensitivity to racial issues and disabilities, one thing we're not sensitive about is age. There is so much ageism that goes on, and it's okay. People make age jokes all the time. Or,
But there's also a whole thing about people getting mad because they get fired because they're too old.
of
and
course.
They call that ageism, which
Right.
it's like a one big umbrella
Yeah,
for a
there
whole
is.
huge...
It's
It
in
is
the corporate
technically
structure, yeah.
illegal to fire somebody because of their age, except in a few exempt occupations.
if they're already dead.
Well, yeah, you can let them go, but you have to wait a couple weeks.
Right.
My brother was just forced by law to retire at age 65 as an airline pilot.
But that
And I
That's a safety measure.
Okay,
Yeah,
and I
that's a
would
safety
train engineer.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
would even begin to talk about truck drivers in that regard.
Sure. Well, same thing.
But that's also weird because we all know 95-year-old people that play tennis and 40-year-old people that can't get out of a chair. So
Right.
I guess they got to have just like a swooping thing like that.
But Jackie, I'm very sensitive to your physical infirmities because the other day I had the sniffles. Come on, I made him laugh.
See, this is what works for me because he throws in things that aren't funny. It makes me look like a genius. Now, my question was among the question. All right, I'm an old guy,
Right.
and I made a joke about his age. So have I opened up the field to where now we can talk about anything? Like if a Puerto Rican guy makes a joke about another Puerto Rican, does that open the field where now they're free to make black jokes and short jokes and you know what I mean?
I don't know if
I
that's
think-
You
the
understand
case.
what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I get you. I get you. I don't know if that's the
opening
case,
the
though.
politically correct balloon?
Do you know what the answer is for comedians?
If it
The
gets a
answer,
laugh.
yes, the audience will tell you what they will accept
good
and what
point,
they
yeah.
won't accept. It's as simple as that.
That's a good point.
It's as simple as that. If the audience is laughing, fine, but you don't want to get an ooh. If the audience goes ooh, then you've not done your job as a comedian. You've made them uncomfortable, and they've reacted that way.
That's really funny because when I texted back to Paul, what's it called? The Half of Paul Veneer Show, the lady in the car next to me went, ooh. So maybe that's not
But I got to
good.
tell you, as I age as a comedian, I believe in taking a weakness if you perceive it as one, and I don't necessarily do, but I make my jokes now are all about dealing with age.
It's the elephant in the room.
It's the elephant in the room, but if you address it, comedy audiences, if you address it up front, are okay, fine, let's go, let's laugh. I had to go on stage once with a patch on my eye. I had an eye infection. I was self-conscious about it. I went up, I was introduced, I did a couple of pirate jokes, I explained what was going on, and it was
And
just
he was
forgotten.
like, only half the audience is laughing. And then he realized he couldn't.
I couldn't see the other half. No, but you know what I mean. They're gonna
You know, a real good example. I don't think we talked about this on the show. A real good example of this. 1993, I did the Club Soda show, the dirty show at Just for Laughs, and it was me and Robert Schimmel, and Nick DiPaolo, whoever else, and it was the most amazing show. It was the greatest time I ever had in my life. And the first guy on was a guy named Roger Rittenhouse. Have you ever heard of him? He's missing a hand.
Oh.
But he doesn't have a fake hand. He has a prosthesis, like a metal prosthesis
Wow.
with like a hook.
Yeah.
And he's a comedian. But he comes out and he does 2 jokes about that, and then it never references it for the rest of the time and destroys, which is exactly what you're talking about.
Well, Mitchell Walters, the late, great Mitchell Walters, was very, very heavy and never once referenced it in his act, and it was a non-factor. Most very heavy
Come on,
comedians.
Helen Keller knew he was fat.
Then you got, then you got people,
and not only that, but he talked about flirting with girls and hey chicks.
I know,
which was like
just completely unbelievable. Now, David,
yes.
you are no spring chicken. Now, Jackie and I make you look like a spring chicken. But you've been watching comedy for now a long time.
Long time, yeah.
And what changes have you seen from when you were young and taking history with a dashing young professor at Portledge School?
I don't know how smart a question this is when he's sitting here with 2 guys that haven't changed their acts in 30 years.
Yeah, Jackie, but I'm messing with my order.
Oh, okay. I don't remember him starting with that. Go ahead.
But what kind of changes? And changes for the better or changes for the worse? What do you think?
Well, yes and no in both ways. I've seen, I grew up basically watching comedy. The way I started getting into comedy is I was, a kid living in Douglaston, Queens, which is right on the border in Nassau County and Queens, as you know. And my, you're living in the suburban life where with my parents, and I go to school, and my only windows to the outside world were The Tonight Show, David Letterman, SNL, and Rolling Stone magazine. Those were my windows to the world.
So we're children of the 50s. Were you a kid of the 80s?
Well, I was born
70s?
In 1970.
So you're 12, 13, 14?
Yeah, but this is in the 70s. This is in the 70s. And what I used to do is, it was an interesting thing. So my parents would have they had a high bed, like a really high bed. Like it was really high up. And as a kid, they used to watch The Tonight Show all the time. And I used to crawl underneath their bed and watch The Tonight Show.
And they wouldn't know you were there.
And they wouldn't even know I was there.
Wow.
And the good news is I knew nothing would ever be going on with my parents, because if they closed the door, then I'm shut out. Right. So and then I knew I was safe. So if the door was open, I knew I was safe. So I went underneath and I would watch The Tonight Show, and I would always follow the TV guide to see what stand-ups were coming on. Like if Rodney was coming or if Rickles was coming. It was like a big night.
Fun. And he remembers the instant he entered into puberty when Charo went coochie coochie.
Well, it's interesting. So I used to love the fact that stand-up was such a fascination for me, because every single stand-up is different. There's no 2 stand-ups that are exactly the same. So and I think there was so much of the personality of the comedian back in the day. I really, appreciated that, from Robert Klein to Rodney Dangerfield and Jerry Seinfeld. Everybody was so different. Everybody had a different energy. Everybody had a different perspective. Today, some of the comedians, they almost try too hard to put on a whole facade. And they try to be somebody they're not, instead of going with who they are.
Being true to themselves.
Yeah,
the little bit, I put jokes on TikTok.
Yeah.
And when you put stuff on TikTok, I don't know anything about it, but when you go on it, you can't help it. You're force-fed whatever's on that feed before you go to your feed. And there's always endless comics, and none of them are being them. It's just like it's an Italian guy trying to be 350% Italian.
Right.
Or, these crazy, almost like you got to sell 5,000 things in the first 10 seconds.
Exactly.
But it doesn't work to me.
Right. I'll give you an example. For example, I've seen Jackie a million times do his act, right? He's always hysterical and his jokes are great. But I love watching Jackie. You know what I mean? I love Jackie. I'm invested in Jackie, and then his jokes are great too. But back in the day, you would be invested in the personality of the comedian.
Right.
So, everybody had a different vibe, and
you can't do that if there's nothing there.
I don't see it as much today. That's the problem.
But David, what do you see in Jackie? Because I just don't see it.
Okay, Jackie is,
not good enough to work the
I don't
same
have to tell you,
circle.
you know him long enough. Jackie has an energy about him that is unique. So Jackie called himself an old guy earlier, right? I don't look at Jackie as an old guy. I look at Jackie as Jackie. Like Jackie 25 years ago is the same Jackie as a guy sitting here. He may feel older, but he's still the essence of Jackie.
Okay, enough of me. Let me ask you a question.
Yeah.
You're looking at these guys the same way as I am, and probably Peter,
Yeah.
and you're not seeing that, what you saw back then. I wonder if people of his or her generation, if they see that. Maybe we, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
Maybe,
I get you. Yeah.
Who knows?
Well,
know?
everybody, obviously, everybody's an adult, and I'm learning about adulthood through some of these comedians, and learning about a lot of things in adulthood through the comedy. And I really, like George Carlin was huge. I had all his albums, and what I would do is I started buying comedy albums on cassette and hiding them from my parents because my parents didn't want me.
Were they that strict?
Yeah, well, my parents are pretty strict. Like I grew up,
At a sheltered private school.
Yeah, sheltered private school. My dad was a Marine, and
Wow,
he was kind
I
of like
didn't know that.
Catholic, and it was kind of like hardcore, and it was.
And he might have heard the wrong 10 seconds of George Carlin.
But
and said,
right, exactly. My
Right.
father would be like, look at George Carlin and be like, that guy's gonna make you smoke pot.
Actually,
it
it would have been like, actually,
no, I'm not a pot smoker, but it's just funny that like he would.
one
be
of the
worried
things we
about
do
stuff.
on
The
this
bad
show.
influence.
Bad
One of the
influence.
things we do on this show, David,
Yeah.
is we tell the truth.
Yeah, well, hey.
Okay. Now, and I wanted to say, your father probably heard the wrong 7 seconds of George Carlin. If you think about his.
Yeah.
last
No, I know. I
seven-
hear what you're saying, but
7 words.
my parents were so driven in me growing up, with the right ideals, with the right morals, and I understand that as a parent now.
but did that backfire? Did it make you want to,
No.
you know what I mean?
Well, I'm sort of an interesting breed. I don't really fall within any sort of category. I wasn't a jock, and I wasn't a nerd, and I wasn't,
Well,
no, but I'm a comedy nerd. Yeah, I understand what you're saying. But I mean, like, I wasn't,
You were a
come on,
middle-
I didn't
mid-
fit
come
into
on.
the
You
stereotype.
were walking around the Oyster Fest with 8 cameras. You're going to call him a nerd.
Hey, listen,
He's
I
a collector.
well, no, I wasn't a collector. I had several cameras working on the Oyster Fest because I was doing multiple jobs.
I know.
Now, David, we want to remind. Let's
That's
remind
all
our
right.
audience, longtime entertainment reporter
Yeah.
for Newsday. And I want to pick your brain about what you see, what you saw in the 90s when it comes to comedy, and what you see now, and what's the difference, and
Well-
what is happening.
Well, for sure, just to be straightforward, I've been a long-time entertainment journalist on the island for 37 years.
Okay.
So when I was 15 onward, but I've only been in the past 10 at Newsday. So, but in terms to answer your question,
Where were you before Newsday?
before Newsday, I was 17 years at the Oyster Bay Guardian.
Okay.
I spent 10 years at Good Times Magazine, 10 years at the Island Ear. I did freelance for Nightlife Magazine and The Angle and other publications. I ran my high school paper, and I ran my college paper, and I was, at the
And you
entertainment
also
section.
were involved in the Riverhead County Jail
No.
paper briefly.
No.
Did
But,
you put that out? Did they have a
No,
paper?
I skipped that one. But in terms of, to answer your question, I don't see the risk, I guess, that a lot of comedians would take. I mean, I grew up watching, Richard Pryor and George Carlin do their thing, and the putting themselves out there the way they did. I'll never forget learning about when Richard had his accident.
Yes.
And he went on stage and talked about it.
Which was beyond
It was
pale.
it was unreal. I mean, it was unreal that he would do that. I don't see some comedians, playing. I mean, you have to realize they're also coming up in a totally different culture with Twitter and all these people like ready to pounce on them online.
10,000 comics.
Yeah.
know.
Oh yeah, there's way more comedians than there ever was, and there's everybody has a special, and everybody's they make their own special and they just put it up on YouTube, and it's not like back in the day when you got a special, it was
You know
it was
what? I've never
gargantuan,
asked anybody
Yeah.
because I don't know. Everything is so short form, but when people are headlining, like these younger guys are headlining at clubs and stuff, are their acts like 15 minutes instead of 50 minutes?
No, they're doing
still
full
doing
sets. They're doing full sets. It's not that they're not doing full sets, but a
Some
lot
of
of
the
them
owners get frustrated because these guys
yeah.
have 45 million hits on TikTok,
right,
and they don't
well,
have 3
no, a
minutes
TikTok
of-
thing is a whole different
I don't mean
thing.
TikTok, but quote
Yeah.
unquote
Yeah.
the internet.
But
Yeah,
is
yeah,
it
yeah.
good or bad that you can now quote unquote draw or quote unquote make it, and it's not coming necessarily out of the clubs? You can come out of social media.
Well,
you can pack
yeah.
Westbury Music Fair or whatever it's called now
Yeah.
from social media.
NYC
But that's
Theater
fine.
and
That's like,
Westbury,
we all made it on radio. Is it really fair for them to use television?
Well-
it's your job to get the people into the tent.
Right.
That's your,
and
that's your
I would
sole
imagine
job.
bands can bypass record companies.
totally.
And that's a good thing, I would
It
imagine.
is, but it also crowds the pool. You know what I mean? There's no curating. You know what I'm saying?
Yes,
Like
yes.
there's just too many.
Nobody's vetted,
No one's vetted.
Yeah, but maybe
It's
the
a
audience
free-for-all.
should do the ultimate vetting.
which they do.
I understand, but the thing is that, like, as you well know, look at our television. Like, there's so many shows, you get overwhelmed with what to watch. There's so many comedians, So, like, I mean, I do believe in that the cream of the crop always rises, but at the same time, there's just so much wading through a lot of what I call background Muppets.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, they're just sort of like
Background Muppets.
That's my phrase that I use a lot of times.
All right.
Stuff
All
that's
right.
not important and has
Something
no
really good
definition.
could slip through the crack.
I'll give you an example. Like Jim Henson is like one of my all-time heroes.
Yes.
And what he used to have his character Muppets, like the main known ones, and then he would have background Muppets to fill the background. And when you're a background Muppet, you don't stand out. You're sort of, sometimes background Muppets don't even have eyes. They're just in the background. To
Seriously?
Yeah, I'm serious.
I'll tell you something.
I
Background
don't
Muppets.
wanna be a background
No.
No,
but
you're definitely
I have
not a
just
background
learned.
Muppet.
I've just learned a new phrase. I
Yeah.
think it's terrific. It's for all the nonsense in the background.
Yeah.
That's hard to tell what's going on. Background Muppets. Boy, what a great expression. Listen.
Yeah.
We want to talk on our next episode with you about so many things, changes in comedy.
This is him segueing to the end of this episode.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I do it smoothly until Jackie.
He's got the wheels out. He's
He's got-
sprinting
When he
away.
went,
this is-
background Muppets. What a way to end
What a
this.
Background Muppets. This show, by the way, is not Background Muppets. This is a show about stand-up memories. We have the perfect name for this show. Stand-up Memories.
Stand-up Muppets.
We've got a lot of them. We've got David Criblez coming back for our next episode who has tons of memories. And I want to talk to David about how many professional artists, comedy and music, think that there's nothing on Long Island in between the Hamptons and maybe Westbury or the Paramount.
What happened to the part about stopping the episode?
You're right.
Back next week.
We will. Hey, a new episode of Stand-Up Memories every Wednesday.
How exciting is that?
Starring me, Peter Bales, and right here, Jackie the Joke Man Martling.
Please follow us on social media. Search it out. What is it? Me space?
MySpace,
Your space?
TikTok, Instagram, Facebook.
Doodah, doodah.